why I farm, and the why is really important to me, and I think it's important to my customers and the way that they interact with our business. And then also a bit about how I farm and how influential Joel has been in my orcharding enterprise. And obviously I'm not running a pastured animal operation. I will have animals in the orchard eventually, but our trees are too little at the moment for that to happen. But it's more Joel's way of thinking that has really influenced the way we farm. So obviously I can't take a lot of his technical components as far as how to do a pastured operation into running a tree farm, essentially. But his way of thinking's been really influential. So I just want to give you a bit of background about me. As I said, I'm a first generation farmer. And I think it's important to understand the pathway that people take to get from not being a farmer to being an alternative farmer. Because we need to get more people farming. And not that there's only one pathway, there's multiple pathways. My pathway is not the only way, but the nuances to what got me farming is probably important. So I was lucky. I grew up in the bush. My dad was a forester. I grew up in Port Punker, a little town just down the road. We had a family-owned sawmill. And we had a small farm, not a commercial farm. Dad was a hobby farmer, but he loved growing trees and he had a small orchard and loved growing veggies. So that rubbed off on me. But more so, the most important thing was Dad had this book. It's called Self-Sufficiency by John Seymour. Has anyone seen it? Yeah, and I was a little kid in primary school and I used to flick through this book and I didn't read it much, but I just looked at the pictures. And it's like, I want to say like small farm porn. It was just amazing. For a young kid, I wasn't interested in girls. I just looked at these awesome illustrations of what this English farm looked like at each of the seasons, and it really sunk into me. And anyway, I thought that was pretty cool. I never wanted to be a farmer though. I never knew that. I just, that sort of all sunk in. I studied geology and went on to become a geologist. And then, I moved up here to Stanley actually, not where I'm living now, just another little cottage, and I was surrounded by an apple orchard. And there used to be 30 families here farming apples, and the Cooks are one of them. There's now 3 left in Stanley, and I saw Tony Shamron, who was the orchardist around my little cottage down there 20 years ago, push out the last of his pears and apples. And I hadn't thought much about anything much until then. John Seymour was sitting there inside me somewhere, but and I said, well, why is he pushing the trees out? This is crazy. Like, why would you do that? Then I started asking a few questions, and he's not making enough money, and for good reason. None of the kids want to take it on because the supermarkets and the wholesalers are getting all the money, and there's not enough for poor Tony. So I started thinking, that'd be pretty cool. I reckon I could maybe run an orchard and just have a short supply chain and try and make it work that way. But I didn't think much more about it, and that was about 20 years ago. And anyway, went off and did a few other things. And then both my parents got cancer. And I started thinking, shit, I don't want to get cancer. Like, I started questioning my mortality and started looking into why people got cancer. And I started thinking about holistic health and the impact of obviously all the chemicals in our system and our food supply, and starting to ask me a few questions about my health and me looking after my health holistically. So rather than treating symptoms, looking at the cause of people's bad health, and starting asking me questions about a health system. But then I started linking that to a food system. I started thinking, if you're not going to get better by treating the symptom as a human, you're not going to make your farm any better just by treating the symptom. You've got to get to the root cause of what's making your farm not work. So I started incorporating a bit of that, and then I started thinking, well, the whole reason our food system's sort of stuffed is our whole culture's kind of stuffed. And I started looking at this whole thing holistically, and it just blew me away. I'd never thought about systems thinking or anything like this before, and I thought, Jesus, this is amazing to me. So I just started piecing everything together. I thought it's all interlinked, right? So just our whole food system's broken because our culture's broken. I need to try and fix the whole thing. And then, obviously I didn't think I was going to fix the whole thing, but at least I could make a difference here in my region maybe. And then Joel Salatin came to Albury back in, I don't know when it was, 2009 or so. I don't know if you remember Joel coming to the National Environment Centre. You've probably been to a million places. Anyway, I came and listened to Joel speak. And by then I wanted to grow trees. I wanted to be an orchardist. I didn't want to grow livestock as such, but I thought I'd come and listen to this bloke. He's pretty interesting. And he had a profound impact on me. And as I said before, he had an impact because he changed the way I thought. He made me think I can challenge the orthodoxy around the way I orchard. And he didn't mention anything about orcharding. All he mentioned was this three-legged milking stool, and my farm business has got to have three legs to it if I'm going to make it viable, and I don't need to think like every other orchardist around me. And I think that's the real power of being a first-generation orchardist, is I'm not stuck thinking like my parents did or my grandparents did in the orchard. I'm not stuck thinking about how all their mates orcharded. I can just come up with any crazy idea I want. Granted, a lot of them probably won't work, but I'm free to sort of make them, you know. So Joel had that really profound impact. So there's three things. There's really the diversity of my farm and making sure that's viable, but also just the way I can question orthodoxy and push a few boundaries. And so that was sort of my journey into farming, and I was hell-bent on farming after seeing Joel, and I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I knew I needed to do it strategically. And I wanted to see how other people were doing it really smartly. So I went to where the best small orchards are, with the best radical local food system in the world, I think, and that was Vermont in the United States. And it operates out of the old Beechworth train station as its own little retail, community-owned, 100% community-owned supermarket linking producers to food eaters. But not only does it provide an avenue for food, it also celebrates fruit and allows people to remember what it's like to actually own components of your food system, for the community to own their food system and the community to get engaged with their farmers and to get excited about the seasonality of food. So we're sort of taking back that ownership, and we're saying to the big multinational supermarkets, we can do this here in our region without you. It's a start, and we've got a long way to go, but we think we've got a pretty good start. And then I started farming. So we bought our little property here in Stanley and got underway, which really leads me to my why, which is the next part that I'm going to talk to you guys about. There's a phrase that kicks around in my mind by a guy called Simon Sinek that goes like this: people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And it's not necessarily buying your product, it's about them buying your story, or buying into your farm, or buying into your ethos, or buying into the way you do things, as well as buying your product. So for me, getting my why really strong was really important to me. So my why for farming really comes back to my community and the connection to my community, and providing good, clean food to my community, providing an avenue to celebrate food, all these things you do with the Beechworth Food Co-op as well. And I really strongly believe that if you're just growing food to make money, then all you're going to get is a transaction between someone wanting to purchase food and they hand you the money, and in fact you're probably not even part of that transaction. You're sending your food off to a market somewhere else. But if your why is really strong, and I was really sure that our why was strong, people want to connect with it, and people want to know and get involved with what we're doing, and they want to come and see the farm, and they want to come and hang with us and come to our events. So our why was a really strong thing for me. And we're trying to get as many of those natural forest ecosystem services to provide everything I need in the orchard. So all of those components I need, like pest control and fertilisation, and regulation of water and erosion control, all of those things, I try and get the forest to do naturally. So my orchard is essentially, I'm trying to build it like a forest. Super important, as I said before, and farming surely is the most noble profession on earth. I don't think I have anyone disagree here.